Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast, brought to you by Huntworth. Huntworth gear for all types of weather, all types of terrain, all types of budgets. It's clothing that just works. Check them out at huntworthgear.com. So we are headed back down to the ATA show this year. The Patreon groups have been asking and kind of seen some stuff online. The show is much smaller than it has been in years past. This year, no Badlands Film Festival. Badlands not going to be there. Trophy Line's not going to be there. Many of the bow companies haven't been there since before COVID. So it's not exactly what I guess people kind of expected or what they've seen from years past. So we'll see how it goes. Definitely, if you're a consumer, this isn't a consumer show, but one of the ones I've been meaning to get to is the NWTF show. From all my buddies that have to go to these things, that are working for companies or other things like that, NWTF seems like the fun show to go to, and the NRA show is huge. I'm going to be going to that one at the beginning of February, so be back there as well. But yeah, we got John out of retirement. He's raring to go and very disappointed that the show is lacking a lot of these things that it's had in years past. So yeah, that's what we got on the docket. I just realized, being first of the year, we got to get that fourth quarter giveaway done. So once we get back from ATA show, I will do the drawings and figure out the winners from the Patreon group from all of our partners, Huntworth, Latitude, Big Shot, Spartan Forge, Lucky Buck, Kanadi and Zinger, Genesis 3D, and I'm going to revisit some of the other guys that we've dealt with in the past year that are going to be at the show. And then I'm going down in there on the capacity for the Bowman's Club. So the Bowman's Club last year, we did our fundraiser dinner for the MB Archery Association, and that's a nonprofit that is helping youth archers. We're doing some scholarships. We got the S3DA youth coaching program and stuff like that. So it helps us with that sort of stuff, as well as providing facilities for that, as well as the college courses and things like that. So going to be down there at the ATA show trying to squeeze some of these companies for some donations to help the next generation of archers. So we'll be doing that. The Bowman's Club has their archery league starting up. I think they started up on Sunday. So Muskegon Bowman's Club, if you want to get into the archery leagues, there's probably still time. Just go down there and show up on one of the nights, and you can probably still get in. This week was just for handicapping. So all that said, this week's podcast is a recurring guest, Nick Otto. What do you do with all that venison? What's going on? And catching up on the season and his season, and he's got an interesting take. He's got kids that are coming up. It's getting more and more difficult for him to be successful or get out during bow season. All of these different things that we all face with children and hunting and all that stuff. And so what do you do with that one deer? He just got one deer. So what do we do with that one deer? And then what are some other things? And we kind of dive into that. So fun conversation. Nick is great, and I know you guys are going to love this one. That just from literally the sense of going back and forth talking about the hunting season, kids, and use of some of the organs that you wouldn't really think to use. So a lot of the stuff that we waste, Nick's trying to figure out ways to use. We get into the whys of that too. So interesting conversation. Like I said, it's a fun conversation. Love talking to Nick. And as always, guys, thanks for listening. All right, everybody. Adam back with another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. And I am here with, I would dare say, the best voice in podcasting, Nick Otto from the Huntavore Podcast. The guy is absolutely built for this. How you doing today, Nick?
I am doing fabulous, Adam. Thank you for that plug. Thank you for noticing my voice. I'm not sure if you were just including my voice or you're saying that my face is made for podcasting. I've also been told that before. I'm not the prettiest thing on the shelf, but at the same time, I do try to give the best information that I can. But no, this is awesome. Thank you for having me on your show, on the Bowhunter Chronicles. It's been fun to go back and forth over the years. So yes, when you called me up and said, "Hey, we need to have a chat," I was, heck yeah, man. I was ready to jump on.
Well, I think, probably one of the first like live in-person podcasts that I ever did was in the mobile podcasting studio of Nick Otto and the Huntavore as it's come to be. I think it might have been maybe pre-Huntavore, but it was right around that same time. So it's been a while. I mean, we've been going back and forth on this, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. But that podcast was kind of like, getting your kids involved, and we had Tim Clark on and had a great conversation there. But for people who maybe haven't been following along for that long, or they're just catching this, they're just catching up with us. So the Huntavore, what is that? Like, even that term?
Yes. It was a brainchild I actually had when I was mowing the lawn. Getting my career job, I had some free time on my hands, and having a new wife at that point, having a career job, and granted, this was back in 2010. 2009 is when this kind of started. I really got interested in being very close to my food. I wanted to know the rancher. I wanted to know the grower. I wanted to know who was producing what I was eating. The term locavore has come from that, and essentially it's trying to find as much food as you can or source your food within 100 miles. From that, I became very excited about hunting. Always been around hunting, grew up in a small town that, because I wrestled and I lived on a turkey farm, there wasn't a lot of time open for deer season. So it would be me and most of the girls in high school showing up November 15th. But I got really interested in that, and I had my friends take me on a few hunts, got myself involved into that. And through that brainchild, I thought, man, what a great way to source your own food, but from your backyard or from ground that you're not having somebody else cut that animal. You're not having somebody grow that animal for you. You're going and acquiring it. And so shortening my food chain as far as me being the one that acquires the meat, that really became something I became passionate about. Also the need for being able to cut my own meat. I grew up doing that as a kid, and now transitioning to doing it for myself. I had friends, I had colleagues, I had people curious as far as how do you cut up a deer? How do you get these cuts to then transform into meals? And so from all of that, that's where Huntavore was born, as far as being able to be a resource that we could find a way to cut that deer in a better way. If you like burger, we can make burger better. If you like hot sticks or you're into summer sausage, what are techniques to make your summer sausage better, tastier, something you want to share? So we're not looking to change how people eat. We're just wanting people to eat better. So in a nutshell, that's what Huntavore is really taking our harvest, taking those kills that we've had and making the best of it. Not trying to just let the processor handle all that, but ourselves jumping in and having a hand in what we do. So yeah, to basically lay that out for listeners, that's what we're all about at Huntavore.
So how far down the rabbit hole have you gone on like the foraging? Like, I got one brother who it's funny, there's that, the old, the adage where like you would say like, well, we can't all be hunters, but some of us have to be gatherers. Like my brother who hunts the least, and he actually did shoot a deer with his bow this year, and his daughter shot her first deer with a rifle. And, so he's got, he's participating. But he has bees, he does honey, and he's like a wealth of knowledge when it comes to like, dandelion salad and like mullein and chaga and all this other stuff. So I'm very familiar with it. And actually my daughter got a keyboard for Christmas and she was down here in the basement practicing. So I was the obligatory keep the boogeyman away dad in the basement. And I pulled one of my foraging books off of the shelf, just going through it. And it's just a Midwest one written by a Midwest lady. So I'm familiar with most of the plants that are in there. But how far down that rabbit hole have you gone?
Still dabbling. One of the things that, stuff that's very much right in front of your face is as far as I've gotten. Berry wise, again, growing up and having 40 acres of, I don't want to say dirty farming, but we've come a long ways in our farming practices. So we had a lot of brush encroaching onto the field. A lot of those I don't want to say riparian zones, like real brushy areas. So, black raspberry is hugely abundant. Blackberries themselves, hugely abundant. Mulberry. Those three I've been, again, trained as a kid. You just know the timing to go get that. And it's right before 4th of July. That's when you go get a bounty of these berries. It goes into scones. It goes into pancakes. You make desserts with them. And so we've been freezing that, and we'll use those as either smoothies throughout the winter. But that's been a huge part of my foraging, basically because it was right in front of my face. As far as nettles go, I'm still in pursuit. Very interested. A lot of documentation, a lot of articles out there about how tender and tasty young nettle shoots are. And
that sounds
I'm
dirty.
very interested. I have a personal connection with this because this plant is the bane of my outdoor existence. Prickers they seem to find me all the time. Burrs are also right up in there. But nettles, I'm not allergic to poison ivy. Knock on wood that I don't develop that later, but that's kind of been my superpower is I don't get poison ivy, but I react severely to nettles. And there's been many a times where we've been riding dirt bikes or whatever, and I happen to have a cutoff on, and I dump alongside the path, and I am now rolling around in nettles, and it's just your whole body it's on fire. I'm just sitting there screaming like, oh my gosh, it's so terrible. So finding a way to get back at that plant, to say like, you know what, you've stung me for so long. It's now time for me to get back at you. So I've been looking forward to that. I got some older shoots and, I forget his last name, but his first name's Alan. Absolutely a guru when it comes to foraging. He's out of Minnesota, and I sent him some pictures of what I was doing. He's like, "Hey, good start. Those are going to be pretty woody. You're gonna chew on those." And they were like, you could feel the veins that are inside the plant. Those were really abundant. It was like little pieces of floss that I still had in it. But as far as a blanched little side-by-side, trying out some nettle and really like getting that mild flavor from nettles, I'm like, wow, this is like baby spinach. Very close in that. So that's kind of been as far as I've really gotten. As far as mushrooms go, my poor disc golf play, I gave up ball golf. I will go on scrambles. I will go when there's a bachelor party, and we'll just hack among the course. But my brother-in-laws have gotten into disc golf, and I'm finding that if you have really bad drives off the tee, inevitably you're going to end up into some woody brush. I have found my personal plot of morels off of bad throws. I have found chicken of the woods from a bad drive. So as long as I don't get better at disc golf, I find that those public areas are just loaded with fungus and mushrooms waiting to be picked. You just got to be there at the opportune time. But as far as like keying out things that are very, very niche, it's been I haven't quite delved into that, but all the easy pickings, I'm willing to take. Being that opportunist, I guess I'm a bit of a raccoon when it comes to the foraging aspect. Is if it's in front of me, I'm going to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I just didn't know like how far you've gone with it, because when I think of you, I think of like all the wild game processing and these like fancy meals and all this stuff, kind of like, I don't know, like redneck gourmet, I think is probably the best kind of way to put it. I mean, I understand that there's venison in fancy restaurants and stuff like that, but we make do around here.
Correct.
But I think back, I don't like mushrooms at all, but everybody's like, oh, you got to try these. And I've tried them, but that got me thinking about the 1 year at Boyne. I think when you did all of the turkey knuckles, we found morels out on the course, and then it's going back to Boyne. So there's going to be leaks and ramps everywhere on that course, if you recall. So I didn't know if you're like, forget about shooting. I'm just, digging up all these, filling up my coffers. So I didn't know in that vein, if you're like, okay, well, I'm going to take the kids out and we're going to get a bunch of ramps or something like that.
Yes. Well, I would put ramps in there kind of along with that common. It's going to be right in front of you. Here in Michigan, we're blessed with a lot of different areas that you can find these little growth plots. I found a few here on the farm already. So it's funny how you say like forage, where once you get to know a property, it takes I don't want to say there's still the challenge to go find things, and there's still the challenge to make sure that you hit it at its peak ripeness. But once you figure out your spots, it's almost like going to the grocery store. It's almost like going to the farmer's market. It's going to be there, and now you're just going to go see how much you can get. I have heard with those ramps, you do want to be careful with how much you take off of your spots. If they are smaller, picking some of the mature ones out of there and then let the rest lay there so it can continue to grow. You get too much of that, you get overpicked or over foraged, especially on public land, you can totally kind of ruin that spot. But as far as making that I can get things from the environment, the same spot that I'm acquiring my meat, it ties it all together. I know we've joked about too, like picking up a deer off the ditch, and now the timing isn't always the same, but to go back to that same ditch and maybe find wild asparagus, like I can't think of a better pairing than having a road-killed deer and the road ditch asparagus right alongside of it. Like like you said, there's that redneck gourmet that's going on. So really elevating the the redneckishness.
Maybe a ditch chicken along with it, just to kind of round out the theme, for your courses.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that kind of makes me think like, and this is like for all the people that are listening, they're like, this is not bow hunting by any means, but I don't care. It's a fun conversation. And so like, have you had anybody, I know one of the other guys, I can't think of the podcast right off the top of my head, but have you had anyone on there from Alone or anything like that? Like you follow along with that show?
Oh, I do follow along with that show. The last like big name that I knew on there, wasn't that Clay Hayes that was on there? I tell you, that guy's a hard ass. That guy.
Friends of NRA is your chance to support our Second Amendment rights and preserve America's hunting traditions. Join Friends of NRA at one of our 600 exciting events nationwide. From games to auctions and exclusive firearms, Friends of NRA events are your chance to support a cause you care about while having a great time with patriots in your community. Whether you're a seasoned shooter, an avid hunter or outdoorsman, or passionate about freedom, there's a place for you within Friends of NRA. Visit friendsofnra.org to find an event near you. Stand up for freedom with the Friends of NRA.
The 1911 is one of the most iconic firearms in history. Designed by John Browning, the 1911 was the standard issue sidearm of the U.S. military from 1911 to 1985. While Colt produced the original, almost every major firearm company has produced its own version. It's wildly revered for its reliability, crisp trigger, and is still a favorite for all types of shooters. Whether you're looking to buy or build a 1911, and just about everything for guns, log on to midwayusa.com.
I mean, I think everybody in the archery world, I mean, they knew him from making his self bows and putting those together. Amazing tutorials he has. In fact, like he makes it look so easy that I was like, I'm gonna save this piece of mulberry. Maybe I can make a kid bow out of this. Now that it's still sitting over there next to the wood fire pile, I have a feeling it's going to end up as firewood just because I'm getting busy with so many different things. But to see him then go on that show and, freaking shoot a moose, like what a way to just show your proficiency with that element. So I haven't, I follow along with those shows. I really liked the Last Frontier. What is it? The Kilcher Family. It was a different show on History Channel, but it was
Jules
all
family. Yeah.
Yeah. Hanging up there and basically farmsteading, basically homesteading up there in Alaska, like very interesting stuff. And so being able to watch that and then even watch Alone, just at a point where it starts out as a show that I can outlast people. And then you see those people change a little bit, and it's almost like they forget that they're on a show. Like they've adapted, they've made this now their life. You look at like Clay up there, and he had to go through struggles and stuff, but after a while it was, their interviews became a little bit different, and they do miss their families at home, but all of a sudden it became like this list of things that I have to do today. And I thought that was really, really neat, of just a person who goes into a situation who could have could have many different reactions. One, a complete shutdown, bail out, get me back to society, and someone who can then just accept, like, well, here I am. How do I make this better? How do I survive this? And to see them go through those changes. No, I do really enjoy that show.
Yeah, and just when you were talking about, like, kind of like going to the grocery store, and I always think about, I think sometimes we can be, not sometimes, like as a society, we're like incredibly wasteful. And every time like I butcher an animal, like, you get lazy with the rib meat, or like picking around the neck bones and all that stuff. If you're coming off of the thing, and it's just like, if I was on Alone, like I'd be boiling up every single piece of this carcass, and I always, like, every time, like that, I guess that's what like brings me, like centers me a little bit, like makes me do a little bit better. Like I'm by no means taking all of the meat off of the bone. Like it's not picked clean like it is if it was coyotes or ravens or something like that. But at least I'm cognizant of like the waste from it. And it's, like I said, it stems 100% from that show. Cause I was like, if I were starving, like there's a 3 days worth of meat right there,
Absolutely. Honestly, I don't think I've ever felt the real sensation of starvation. If for folks, if you are watching this, I'm a stout guy. I'm thick. I'm thick with 2 C's. I could miss a few meals and be just fine. I don't think I've ever had the sensation of starvation, but I do see that transition from animal to resource, and you're given a finite amount of time to go get what you're going to need for that year. You have a season of time to get a deer. Some years you're going to walk out of there with 3 or 4 does, get 2 buck tags. You're going to be swimming in venison. And I think that's when we then get overwhelmed with the work. If you do your own processing, you get overwhelmed with that work and you start to let things slip. This past year, my archery season, it was one of a lot of change, both, I would say, in the environment, very warm. We had EHD, I think, take out a lot of whitetails in our area. I had a new neighbor come against my property, so that kind of changed the way deer were moving. And I wasn't able to take a deer this year during archery. It's been quite a while since that's happened. So when I was finally able to take a doe in that first week of firearm, my goal, or my I don't want to say my goal, my vision of what was going to happen with that deer changed dramatically. It went from, I'm just going to kind of fill the freezer, to like, I need to make as much happen with this animal. I got one here through firearm. I've been able to, through a couple friends hitting deer, through a couple friends actually wanting an animal butchered, and then saying like, well, I don't eat the shanks. Do you want the shanks? Being gifted a few of these pieces that they weren't going to personally use, I was then able to take those, and it's like, I'm going to make something happen with this, just because of my harvest wasn't tip top. I know there's tons of does, but it just did not work out this year in archery for me, that I felt a little bit of that, like, oof, this might be a very lean year as far as new venison in the freezer. Do I have enough stored up that it would have been just fine? Absolutely. And in fact, you know what? Having a lean year might also bring some perspective, but also clear out a lot of old stock that I've had just sitting in those freezers. I can get a chance to now eat those up. So to have a lean year, to have something where it's now hitting you right in the face, it's now right in front of you, as far as this might be the only thing that you get this year, it makes you really clean those ribs. It makes you take those long bones, crack them, and put them in for stock. It makes you save the deer fat to create tallow to use for different things. You feel, I would say, more blessed during the leaner times as far as the bounty that you do get, versus the plentiful times where it's like, hey, let's put this stuff up. Do you want me to clean the ribs bones on this one? It's skinny. Let's not worry about it. Like you do find the contrast of when that happens. You do hit folks too that when they do have, a lot in a year, they will continue to do a good job as far as clean all those off. But I've seen it where there's a huge bounty when we do a big cut night and there's like 8 deer hanging, and people get tired and people get lazy, and pretty soon more than what you were expecting ends up in those trash buckets. So no, I really, I'm feeling you on that, Adam, where it's, you want to make sure that you do as much as you can. I think having a mindset of that, being, like you said, cognizant of your waste versus what you're utilizing, is a huge factor for hunters. We should realize what we are wasting, because we are, again, acquiring outside of what the food system is, that is super wasteful. If we want to separate ourselves, I am doing something different, then we do have to do something different. We can't be wasteful. We have to use as much as we can.
So I think this is probably like a great year for this discussion for yourself, to ask the question, and I feel like we always say like, oh, what's some weird, like crazy stuff that you could do with venison that you normally wouldn't do, because, people they do roast, they do steaks, they do burger, right? Some people keep the shanks for whatever, they'll do tacos or whatever with it, or they'll do, ossobuco, or, however fancy you want to get. But when you have that one deer and you're looking at it, like you specifically, because of the wheels are turning up there, like I feel like when you look out in a field and see deer, you see dishes. You don't see animals. Like there's people who say like, I don't see antlers, I just see meat, and I think that you see dishes. So as you're processing the deer and some of those things that are like left over, like are those things that are wasted or whatever, you got this one deer, like how are you processing it for specific dishes or specific uses? I just had this conversation with my buddy, and he was asking me like what I do. And I'm like, I keep it in the biggest pieces possible because I can then choose later on what I want to do with it. But for yourself, how are you looking at it when you only have one deer and you're like, I want to make all this stuff?
Gotcha. I line up right with what you're saying. I really focus on a seam butchery, where essentially seam butchery is I'm not using a bandsaw to cut the whole leg into like the 96ers that you get on some of the 96 ounce steaks that you're getting off of a big steer. I'm actually going through and breaking down those muscle groups. And just like you were saying, to give me the most versatility, I am going to keep those muscles in larger groups. One, it lets me decide what I want to do with that right away. Two, as far as contamination goes, you're going to get more contamination if you cut those muscle fibers apart. You're going to expose that to the environment, and that's where freezer burn can come in. That's where, if you're not handling your meat, the best that you should have, that's where you're going to run into some, not so good things. You're going to eat early spoilage when you're cutting things into smaller pieces. So by keeping things into large muscle groups, I save myself contamination. I save myself the freezer burn. I'm going to give myself the most versatility that I want to be able to do with that. Like specifically, I'm thinking of like the top round or the bottom round. Both can be done in the oven as a whole roast. If I'm having a lot of people, if I want to turn it into steaks, I can take the bottom round. Bottom round works awesome as far as making a butterfly, then coming back and then pounding on it and doing like a cube steak. Once I get that cube steak, then I can either fry it as is, I could marinate it and then bread it. Again, a ton of different directions that I want to go with that. But by giving myself a labeled sirloin cap or a labeled top round, it then lets me be creative with that piece as I'm going forward. I'm experimenting a little bit now with those pre-cut steaks as far as
Midway USA brand product designers have one straightforward goal: develop high-quality, technically sound products and deliver them to customers at reasonable prices. If you are immersed in the shooting sports industry and pay close attention to every single detail, you know our products are built right and stand up to everyday use. Who has shooting mats and range bag systems to hunting clothing and just about everything for the outdoors? Log on and shop 24/7 with super fast shipping. MidwayUSA.com.
Llévate más de lo que esperas todos los días con el nuevo McValue en McDonald's. Ahora puedes comprar uno y sumarle otro por $1. Así que cuando tu equipo favorito enfrente a sus rivales, enfrenta tus antojos con $5 Meal Deals. Y si estás corriendo para alcanzar el desayuno, corre a la para llevarte ofertas antes del cutoff. Tú decides, y con McValue, tu decisión siempre rinde más. Precios y participación pueden variar. BOGO $1 válido para un producto de igual o menor valor. Debe estar registrado en Rewards para ofertas en el app.
Adding a marinade into the Ziploc bag and then freezing it. So I start out with a simple marinade, it's kind of tomato based at that point. So there's an acidic, there was an acidity to it. You got your oregano, you got your thyme, and salt and pepper. I just kind of mixed that together. But I took a part of the backstrap, I cut it into butterflies, and I've now sealed it into the bag with the marinade. And that went fresh from the deer to the freezer. What I'm hoping from that is I'm letting it soak. I'm letting it do its thing in the freezer. But what I'm hoping to is have a Wednesday night or a Thursday night where get home, I need something quick. I pull a pre-made steaks, marinated. I just let that thaw. And now, somebody could make broccoli they could steam broccoli, which takes 5 minutes, put some dinner rolls in, sear up those steaks, and now you're going to have an amazing meal, but took half the amount of effort because I put that effort forward in the initial butchering processing of that animal. So I'm playing a little bit with that. But just like you were saying before, keeping things big muscle groups allows you the most versatility, especially when you get one animal. Now, when you do get that one animal, you're then going to find a way to keep more of it. I had a great shot where I took out both lungs of this doe and dropped her. I salvaged the heart, I salvaged the kidneys, and I salvaged the liver. I'm still kind of trying to figure out like a steak and kidney pie or a steak and kidney dinner, working with those kidneys. That's something still new to me, working with those specifically. But I've got a couple different ways to use liver that's not intimidating, that allows me to use a piece of that deer that normally is left out in the field. Highly nutritious, highly flavorful, and being able to use that in a boudin sausage. Essentially, a boudin sausage is you're incorporating liver into a sausage that's also bound together with rice. It's a very Cajun dish, but creating little boudin balls that are like either an awesome appetizer or for like a Sunday when you're just doing, game fare at home, you can pull those out, make it real easy to use. But again, that's a piece of meat, or that's an organ that I'm utilizing that didn't get left out in the field. That along with the kidney.
Now, I got to interject here just because, like, I feel like for the hunting podcaster, the influencer crowd, right, is like I get asked all the time, like, do I feel pressure that I have to shoot like a big buck or something like that? And I'm like, if you're following along with this journey, like I'm a shooter, like I'd love to shoot a big buck, but I'm going to shoot things. I'm going to try to just kill stuff. And if it gets me excited, It's excited. And so there could be that like external pressure, right? So were you an Oregon guy prior to this podcasting journey, or like going down this culinary journey, I guess we call it? Or are you feeling pressure like, oh, I got to try something with the kidneys and I got to wash out the stomach because Rinella does that? You know what I mean? Like, is this something that you grew up doing, or is this something that you're doing of your own accord, or you're like, shit, I got to do something, new and exciting?
I will be honest. I felt that pressure early on. I felt that I had to be on the cutting edge. I needed to be one step ahead of Rinella. I needed to be one step ahead of the Liver King. I got to be one step ahead of, you name it, some celebrity chef. And what I'm finding is, just like chasing big bucks, it's not sustainable. But by keeping these different organs, I feel like I'm doing my due diligence, and I'm finding I appreciate things way more. On the culinary side of it, I made ravioli 2 years ago, and it's something I've been wanting to do. My brother-in-law has been getting into making some pasta, and so we were just doing pasta out of the KitchenAid. But we were able to make sheets, and using a little form, I was able to make a liver mousse and put that into these raviolis, sealed it up, boil them for just a little bit, and dang, like it just opened my mind to being able to play with my food. It was something that after a while I wasn't thinking about how I could show this to somebody, or look at me, I'm using the kidneys. Look at me, I'm using the liver. It became, man, when I open that gut up and I have a very clean kill, it's a need for me to take that, because I found usable ways to do this. I'm not just making some fancy dish that I just don't return to. I'm acquiring this now, hoping to make dishes that I've made in the past. So while I wasn't growing up as an organ guy, I was very much a part of the waste not, want not. That was my grandfather went through the Depression. My grandmother went through the Depression. I watched how they used things, And there's definitely like some changes. My grandmother made baskets. She would weave baskets. Red dye is expensive. So she would boil beets so that she would then get she could boil down what was the rest of the water, and that would be her red dye. But then she didn't know what to do with the beets. So then she would then feed those at the table, these beets that have been boiled essentially of most of their color. They were just mush. And I then had to learn how to like beets again because I was just so attuned to overboiled beets, even though she was doing it for the dye so that she could then add it to her reeds. But now as a grown up, or at least I think I'm a grown up, trying to be a grown up, I see what she was doing. She was utilizing what she had. She had an abundance of beets that could be the dye here. When I open up the gut of that animal and I see those kidneys there now, I'm thinking, what are possibilities, not how can I show this to somebody? I guess my biggest critics are going to be my boys. If they continue to eat it and they continue to like it, then heck yeah, man, we're on to something. So they've enjoyed liver in the boudin sausage, mainly because it's covered up enough that they don't know it's there. So it's like, what else can I pop over to them? But no, that's a great question. I'm hoping I started out on that. I got to be on the cutting edge, but as things have worked their way along, that's not sustainable to live on that edge anymore. But I got to live with the means that I have. So if that means utilizing the liver and that means utilizing the kidney that's going to feed me and my family, then heck yeah, we're going to figure that out.
Well, it's interesting the way that you put that about like your boys. You know, I think, you know, I hunted a bunch. You know, we have our yearly camp, and I hunted with a bunch of the different nieces, you know, and I got basically the same thing from them. Like, we're going to eat it anyways. It doesn't matter if it's a buck or a doe. Like, we're just going to eat it. You know, they wanted to save the hearts. They wanted to eat the hearts, which I didn't grow up eating heart. That wasn't a thing until, you know, I guess like social media was like everybody was eating the hearts and all this stuff. And then I was around people that was eating it. And, you know, I had a buddy up there who was like, oh yeah, you got to eat the heart. And this is, you know, even prior to the podcast, this is 15 years ago, probably. He ate some heart and it was a weird texture, you know, but it's fine. Now these kids, like, you can't, you fry up the heart, put it on the table, you turn around and it's gone, like gone, like nothing
right
there. And the thing is that, like, one of the things I noticed you said there is you said, you know, if I can just hide it in there, but like, if that's all they've grown up knowing and they don't have anybody to tell them that you don't eat that part, like, that's just what we do. And I think that kind of comes into like the whole, like, eating animals type thing, like where, you know, you see the pictures of all of our kids with they all have blood on their faces. They're carrying around hearts, pretending to take a bite out of it. You know, I told this before, but like the one day I brought home a bunch of ducks and she's like, can I help you with the ducks? I mean, yeah, breast out these ducks, carcasses are over there, and she's over there giving them CPR and playing with them. It's not like, it's like, oh my gosh, this is so gross or anything like that. It's just, this is life, you know? So I thought that was kind of interesting where you're like, well, I just hide it in there, but like, how do they know, you know, that you just made them a meal, you know?
Yes. Given that their palates are still like, and I say hide it in there mainly because I've used that recipe a number of times, and to have people say, I don't like XYZ. And as they're telling me they don't like this, this, and this, they're eating this sausage that is full of liver. And I made a stuffing. Stuffing was actually out of one of the domestic turkeys from the farm here. It was for a Thanksgiving. I made the stuffing and the liver, the gizzard, the heart, and I picked the neck. That all went into the stuffing. And hearing one of the sisters say, like, she wouldn't do anything with the organs, but then leans over later and says that stuffing's really good. Like, not that I'm trying to then feed them something that they don't know about it, but I think how much, just like you're saying, like, maybe that's the positive of what we're seeing with social media, or with us now being cognizant of being meat eaters. yeah, we did take this animal. I'm going to pull things out of here that you may not know what they are. And I'm going to say, like, this is edible. And we're going to go and we're going to eat parts of this animal. I would say because of the internet, because of social media, because of different avenues, more wild game in its entirety. Not necessarily more wild game pound for pound, but more pieces of venison, more pieces of duck, more squirrels and rabbits, I think, are being consumed as hunters have been able to show, like, here's how I would present that. I think there people are looking for a way to utilize these, because it's been thrown in our face now that you're either, you're a meat eater or you're a vegetarian that hates meat eaters. Like, it comes down to that too. And so then taking on that responsibility and utilizing and not shying away from eating meat, using more of your catch is become something I think people are taking, they're being attached to that. They feel that, just like you were saying earlier, I feel this need to be able to do that, whether it's a doe, whether it's a buck. I want to eat as much of this as possible. So yeah, I did hide it in that sausage, but then to see my boys enjoy that and know this is a dish I'm going to make again, I'm going to have to save the liver specifically for that dish.
Well, and I think if you can get them, I guess my thoughts on it was, like, if you can get them to associate, now they know that they like those meatballs or those sausage balls or that sausage. And you say, hey, bud, we're gutting this deer. Like, don't throw that away. That's where that sausage comes from. Oh, those balls. Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, and that's the way that the kids are with the heart. Like, that's the first thing. Like, you gutted it. Like, where's the heart? Like, can we eat the heart? Like, bring the heart, So, but they know that they like that, and they like, I feel like it's like the ceremony around it. Like, you got to carry it out and all that stuff. And, to me, again, that's like the ultimate, when there is that understanding of, like, this is how we're doing it, and that's what it is, and that's what's kind of like going on there. Man, there's something else along that line. Like, I was going to ask you, like, so how old are your boys?
We have, I got a 10-year-old, I got an 8-year-old, and I got a 6-year-old. And all three of them are, I mean, they're just savage boys. They love to be athletic. Actually, my oldest, he's really becoming refined. He's in a play, but he's also wrestling this year. He's also joining the swim team, or the swim club at our school. And that's all new stuff. He's never done that before. So he's kind of venturing out. I wrestled, so and I'm actually one of the youth coaches. So, Dad's there. It's something familiar. He's actually venturing out and doing the swimming thing on his own. He's doing the play on his own. So he's been really confident to jump into that. And I'm finding my other two, they're confident in who they are, but they still like to stick close to mom and dad. They're still kind of figuring out what they really like to do. But yeah, athletically, they're in a bunch of sports, which comes into play of why my archery season was kind of also a thing, is we were into double sports for two of them. So every Saturday was eaten up. Every weekend was eaten up. And if I was volunteering at church, well, shoot, there goes my Sunday. I couldn't do that. But all three are active, and all three are very interested in hunting. They're very interested in growing. We're getting ready for a garden out of the woods this year. We live in the woods, and so that's always been our hindrance, is sunlight. So we've got a spot. I think we're going to be able to try and put a garden in, and try to defend it from every critter that's going to try and steal whatever we're making out of it. But just showing big, Dad's got an interest in hunting. Dad's got an interest in wanting to do stuff with food. Like, inevitably, they love coming along and trying that out. So they're they're pretty gung-ho, and I think 2025 is going to be a real tipping point as far as their involvement.
Not all agents use Zillow Solutions. After all, this industry is confusing, and it's hard to know who to trust. But the truth is, we're an ally for agents. We want them to succeed. That's why we help agents get ahead with complimentary resources and stay ahead with premium solutions. Zillow works for agents, because home doesn't happen without them. Visit Zillow.com/works for agents to learn more.
We've got, they're still involved right now in a lot of different aspects. We're training on knives. They're my recovery crew. They do a great job following blood. They do a great job at trying to get the deer into the back of the gator or drag it. They want to help out, but it's fun to see them take an interest in something that I'm interested in. But I'm doing it in a way like we want to make this sustainable. We want to make this something that we do this as a lifestyle. It's not just because it's cool or not whatnot. And to see them pick up stuff along that way has been really neat. Our middle boy has been really interested in composting. So we now have a bucket that sits on our deck that, as far as vegetables go or anything that can be composted, has to go in that bucket. And then he goes and drops it in our big compost pile. So he feels like he's really adding to something. This garden that we have in our mind right now, it's not established, but we're going to have some soil, at least in his mind, we're going to be having some soil that's ready to go. So to see him kind of jet out and do that and take a little bit of responsibility, it's been fun to see them be able to do that. But yeah, right now it's still kind of a little bit of a lemmings where, dad does this, so we're going to do this.
So have they been out hunting at all with you?
Yes, we've done some blind hunting, firearms, basically them just observing. I have taken an animal with archery equipment with the oldest. He was gung-ho about that. Every time they're sitting with me, if we're given the opportunity, I look to them, and I think I got this from you actually, was letting them give the green light. If they didn't want to take that, then we're not going to take that. We're just going to watch it. If we're going to take it, whatever it is, I'm going to look to you, and if you tell me yes, then we'll take it. And for him, it was a yearling doe. She was tiny, and that was the biggest thumbs up I've seen from that boy ever. So I was like, well, I can't tell him no. So we had, I was able to just host it over my shoulder and bring it back. But that was his deer. He felt very, a lot of ownership with that. Middle boy, we had an opportunity, but it was just too dark. I could not make the shot, and I think we were past time. So then we had to have that discussion of like why we can't shoot that deer right now. Well, it's against the law, the regulations we put together as a society, as hunters, we've decided that we can't do that. And so having to explain that, we'll just turn your high beams on, Dad. Like, then you can get them. Like, again, no, that other people have done that and they got in trouble. So we having to get that across to them, but they're about the process. And it's funny to see how they take your lead, but then at the same time, they'll also regurgitate what you've told them after a while. 'Cause we'll see them during the summertime. And, my youngest one will be like, oh, make a note. We got to figure out where are they coming in and out so that maybe we can set up on them. And, that kind of hit me. I was just like, wow, he is paying attention to what I'm saying. So to have them, to see that and to have them pick up on what I'm saying is very cool. There's a little bit of the dad pressure too, that like, I want them to be able to want to do this. If you're motivated, I'm going to teach, but I'm not going to force you to do this. And all three boys do feel like they really want to come out and enjoy the outdoors. So that's been, I guess, encouraging to know that they want to do that. And then I've got some of the cousins that, yeah, our property is going to be a lot different when here in a couple of years, when we're going to have, possibly 5 or 6 different Otto children wanting to venture out on opening day. It's going to be one of those things where there's going to be a lot of firsts for those kids, and to see, who picks up on it and who sticks with it.
So have you taken them out at all on the youth hunt or anything like that? I didn't realize anything until last year with my daughter, like that mentored youth tag is like Willy Wonka's golden ticket. Now your one kid, he's already past it, right? Because he can only be 10, but it's like $7. It's a buck tag. It's 2 turkey. It's a fall and a spring turkey tag, and it's anywhere. Like, it's as long as it's not an antlerless only hunt, they can shoot anything, anywhere, anytime. And it's pretty wild,
Yeah. We haven't quite gotten into that. In fact, that was kind of like one of the underlying themes. I think what's going to be this year is, in a few of my episodes, I think I'm going to talk about just my experience as a dad trying to get my kids set up to become hunters, and both through the hunter safety program and setting them up in some blinds, because right now we can't sit still for very long. Where we had an odd year where it was super warm, and instead of having them, wear all their gear, it was like, well, what can we sacrifice? Or, we had a pile of clothes next to us in the blind, but setting them up for a little bit of success as far as making things a little cushy, a little more comfortable, to be able to sit out for deer specifically. And just kind of my walkthrough as far as how am I taking them through here, talking with other dads on how they've set that up, because it's only very recently have they actually walked around with firearms or been practicing with firearms. Middle boy, we got him a youth 22. And so he's been shooting with that. We've chased a number of squirrels around. We went out and had yesterday, actually, I was hoping to have a big, long story to talk about all the rabbits we shot and all the squirrels that we saw, but it was so cold. And I mean, if it went wrong, if something could go wrong, that's what happened yesterday, between dog getting on an injured deer and then chasing that all over high hell, and me then trying to chase down the dog. Finally getting back on our bunny hunts, having both kids shove the barrels into the ground through tripping over a log. And so we had to then, take them apart, clean the barrel out. Now we can get back out there again. So we get back out there, and it was so cold that nothing was moving, and you'd sit for 2 minutes and they'd feel great. And then all of a sudden they'd feel that first chill, that wind cut through them. So it was fun to just walk around in the woods. We ended up going and setting up some targets and then shooting those targets. So at least some rounds were sent down range. The only thing that was killed was time yesterday. So unfortunately we weren't able to put anything in, but we get back to the house and they wanted to tell mom everything that happened. They had stories upon stories, and like, just to see that their excitement, we didn't have to come back with anything at that point. They were just excited for the opportunity to have, to go and try to get something, to know they had a mission, and it just didn't work out because they didn't get out there. They weren't discouraged by not seeing anything. As I guess also as the guide, I wanted to make sure like we gave it our best chance that we could, but at the same time know like when we got to hang it up. If I could keep on tromping around, I probably would still be trying to tromp around, get one of those critters to poke its head out and take it. But I just feeling the room and being like, yeah, we're going to go shoot some targets, and then we're going to go inside and get some cocoa. So realizing where they're at right now, and then building off of that, making hunting something that they do, their cheeks are going to get red. They're going to be tired, but when they come in, they're going to have cocoa and they're going to get to tell their stories to mom. Like, really, that's what hunting is right now. And by building on those positive experiences, when it gets to the point of, man, I'm I haven't seen a deer in this many days and it's really cold. Like, we'll be able to work past that because we have enough good experiences built underneath.
Well, I mean, you know, it's kind of like all those like memes or like those cheesy like Big Brother commercials or like whatever, where they're looking for like the Boys and Girls Club, like where everything goes wrong and you like lost your keys and you were cussing up a storm and everything. And then the kid has the best time ever. You thought it was the worst day ever. And I think that that's the thing that, you know, you got to realize, like, those boys were out there like with their dad goes hunting. They were hunting. And, you know, all the times that dad goes out and comes home with nothing, he was out hunting. He was out doing something, right? So you had freaking Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett with you. I mean, these kids were living what they see, and, you know, just to be able to go out and do that and like all the other stuff, like, you know, I think that that's the thing that like we forget about, like, again, in this world of like social media. And that's what I always try and say is, like, you know, comparison is the thief of joy, but that's always like, oh, could have been bigger, like, blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, like, just being able to be out there to experience these things, like, and the level of, for the most part, and maybe it's not, you haven't had like these experiences, but I think everybody has to have had them. Like, the level of suck is like a multiplier for the memory, right? So if you go out and you do something and it was easy, you're like, well, you know, it was okay. And if it was abysmal and everything went wrong and it was miserable, like, that's burned into your psyche. And it wasn't always like a bad time, because those are like the galvanizing things that like bring you together. You know, in this case, as a family that hunts, these are the things that you have to endure, so that when you do come home with a squirrel or a rabbit or anything, you know what it takes. Because remember how bad that sucked, you know, like, so there's this thing where in our mind, we think like, oh, this is terrible or whatever. But in the kid's mind, they're living their dream, or like what they get to see. Right. So
Absolutely. And I think that's what keeps them coming back for more in that, you know, if I were to wake up today and say, hey, we're skipping church and we're going for bunnies again, you know, we couldn't have not seen anything again. I think we would have had the same reaction out of them. And just to do something real, that it's not a video game. You're not earning points that don't actually have anything. But when you score on a squirrel that weighs, you know, 3 pounds with gut and hide on, and by the time you take it apart, you got your forequarters, you got your saddle, you know, there's less than a pound of meat there. How delicious is that little shoulder after you give it a little parboil, after you then bread it, fry it? Like, how delicious does that taste? Because it comes with the weight of having to go get that. And as far, you know, just like you were saying too, is like, that's the experience that they're going to be able to take away from it. And I think that's why I, as a dad, feel that pressure to give them as much of the positive experiences now, guiding them through that, knowing when to cut, you know, when to say when. Yeah, we didn't get anything, but hey, we came back and we had a great tromp. That's going to help us go out the second time. That's going to help us go out the third time. That's going to help us. Like, I'm building a 350, and hopefully that's going to be something that they can use off of a tripod. You know, because as of right now, the only firearm that I use is a 12 gauge, and that would send them through the blind and several feet behind. But to start to set them up for success at where they are at, and as they grow into things, I think that's going to be something that's going to make them lifelong learners, as far as, you know, dad set me up here. Well, there's going to be a point where you're going to start to do stuff that dad doesn't know what's going on. You're going to have to teach him. You know, the old dog is going to have to learn something here eventually. And I'm sure that day's coming fast, but it's been very neat to take this one step at a time, and to really be faced with a change as far as, Dad's not going to go out and just hunt. It's not just Dad's vacation anymore. Like, as much as I have to get, for me, hey, are my sticks strapped up? Is my, check the saddle ropes to make sure that those are ready to go. All my broadheads are sharpened. I now have to do that eventually times 2. I got to make sure that his sticks are ready to go. I got to make sure that, hey, have you looked at your bow in the past week? Did you put the broadheads on your arrows? Like, there's going to be a slowdown of my process, but eventually the payoff for that is going to be a shared harvest. I think that's something that, I dream about a little bit, and maybe it's, again, I'm trying to take my dreams and impose them a little bit on them, which I need to be careful about. But the idea of that shared harvest where it's a family that's working together to bring in the deer, where our cut night isn't just me and my friends, but now it's going to be me and my middle boy who, shot this really nice doe. And then my youngest, hey, he had a big buck walk in front of him. And so now it's his year to be, the big puff your chest up and be the hero, to create the tradition around that. Like, that's kind of what I'm dreaming about. But at the same time, I want to guide them along and have them make those choices and not have them be forced on them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing is I think, we're fortunate in the fact that we're able to do this, and, because of, our lifestyles and all this stuff, like, it's, at least at my house, like, it's ever present. Like, we're always shooting bows. We're always doing stuff. But and for me, it was different because I have a girl. So it's like, am I going to make this tomboy like have to come with me? Like, I wish you were a boy, or, or am I going to be like, you can't come because you're a girl because I don't want you to be a tomboy? But the way that it is like, the kids just want to be around. They want to be invited. Yeah. So like, you want to be included. Like, you want to come or don't you? Like, perfect example. Go on YouTube, look at the recovery of Jack's deer. My daughter, she's sitting on the couch next to me. She's like, I shot one. Like, okay, what happened? Like, he told me what happened. I said, all right, I'll be out there. I looked at her and I said, you want to stay here at Grandma's or you want to go track a deer? And she goes, can we get McDonald's? I said, we can get McDonald's. So she said, I'm in, and then she's out there. She's like, has Jack ever shot a deer before? I'm like, nope. Has he ever tracked one? Just one. Does he know how to gut one? Nope. He's like, we better show him. She's 8 at this point. So, right. So just to be included, to be along for the ride, because like, as you stated before, like, it isn't like, oh, look at me. It's like, this is what we're doing. This is my life. Like, this is what I would be doing anyways. So one thing I got to ask you though about that hunt, like, because in Michigan, it seems like this year still is like the perpetual gun season. So down by you, is it not open anymore? Or like, I mean, that seems like an opportunity to, take out a wounded deer, the dogs found it for you. Right.
Right. I think I put it on me. There was buckshot. There's buckshot right here in the safe. And all I had on me was game shot. I was running the 12 gauge with the smooth bore. I just didn't have the right ammunition. I wasn't close enough to make like birdshot work on this animal. And it was a flesh wound on that. It didn't want to get out of this bowl, but it was also lively enough that the reason my dog was freaking out so much is that this deer stood its ground and was like, I don't want to move, but you're not getting the best of me. So he's now 15, 20 feet from this deer, and all he's doing is barking because he's like, I don't know what to do with this thing. This thing's going to whoop my ass if I try anything. So as soon as the deer saw me, it boogied out of there. But yeah, to have like buckshot ready to go, man, that again, total opportunity. And that was missed on me. So, shame on me for not having 2 or 3 buckshot in the side pocket, now we've learned this lesson. Now I got to make sure I got everything to go with the shotgun. Cause yeah, even as fast as she was moving, she went in, I can only guess like which neighbor she went with. So I actually shot a text to my neighbors to say like, hey, there might be one laying down. And there are a couple of my neighbors too. They're very opportunistic like I am there. So they were like, oh, yep, we'll keep an eye out looking for her. And they said, oh, we see a couple deer and they're laying down. And then they saw them all get up and they went, oh, no, there was no blood in that bed. So that was definitely one. So I think that one's going to be, it's going to be just fine. There's enough food around too. Like if it lays down, even this cold, it's got enough things to eat on and heal up that, I mean, shoot, it'll probably have another chance to get bred here soon. So I'm like, that one's going to keep on going. So nope, missed opportunity for me. Having the dog though, he's an untrained, he's just a pet. I haven't trained him at all. He's got some Irish setter and then, he's a classic doodle. So he's got poodle in him, but he's an Irish doodle. We've taken more raccoon with that guy. He uses his nose really well and he has treed more critters. I have to walk around with the 22 because then I need to dispatch whatever he's treed. If I don't, he judges me and will be like, I don't want to leave. Like he looks at me with this look of like, you got to do your job. I did mine. So that's been a new thing we've been doing with the dog is, letting him tree stuff. But yeah, when he found the wounded deer, it was like, well, shoot, this is going to be a problem. I don't know how to handle this one at that point. So word to the wise, if you're on a small game hunt, have 2 or 3 buckshot or a slug that you can run through your smooth bore in case that opportunity arises.
If the season's open, and I'll give you a little bit of grace on that because this is not normal, right? This is like, usually it's not like well after the first of the year. It's like, bring your rifle, shoot anything, like grab your torch and pitchfork. We're killing them all. Like it's generally not the case, but this year in Michigan, for whatever reason, it is.
Yep. So we were hoping to take some advantage of that, but yeah, school starts up here. By the time whenever this drops, it's right after Christmas break. It's those opportunities are going to be few and far between. I think I've kind of laid the 2024 season to bed, even though I think there's one more week. I just don't think it's in the cards for us to get out. But we're going to dive in deep to the small game, and fingers crossed. With these past couple days, it being super cold, like we may get on some ice here soon. Hopefully, if it continues to stay cold and thickens up that ice, we haven't done any ice fishing in 2 or 3 years. That would be really nice to get a chance to do.
Yeah, I'm. It's like impossible for me to really get excited about it because I never really ice fished. I'd done it, a dozen times or so. And then the 1 year, I think it was literally like 9 years ago when my wife was pregnant. And we had all that ice. Muskegon Lake was like 2 foot of ice. So
yeah,
there was, there was no like, oh, you got to worry about the ice. Like, oh, is it good here? Is it good here? It was like, go fishing wherever you want. Like go out on anything because it's been cold forever.
Drive whatever you want.
Oh yeah. So like you've been to Muskegon, like people were just driving across Muskegon Lake, like, go to from pub to pub. There's no police out on the ice. So they're just literally driving across the lake, because there was that much ice out there. Well, I got excited about it. I was like, oh yeah, get some ice fishing stuff, like whatever. And then it's just been summer, like a perpetual summer. And then you get ice for 2 minutes. And we've took trips where we were going to, rent the ice houses and stuff. One of them, they were out there and it was sinking and they had to have the guide come and get them. So everybody stayed at the house. We were up on Burt Lake. We went up to Lake Mitchell one year and there was some decent ice, but all around that time. But it's just, you have to go it's kind of like snowmobiling where you have to go travel to find it. And it's I live right across the street from a lake. It would be kind of fun to just grab my daughter, go out there, to not have to be this big production, but who knows? But I can't be optimistic about it. I'll believe it when I see it,
Right. I just, again, because there's I equate it kind of like to camping. My boys right now, like, they love to set up and tear down, and whatever happens in between happens in between. So getting to the campsite and being like, oh, now we got to level out the camper. Like, they want a job. And so it's like, that's where it's real exciting because there's stuff to happen and they get to visually see stuff. And ice fishing, I find, is the same way. Like, oh, we got to get everything out of the truck and get it into the sled. So now we got it on the sled. And I've got I got a few rods. I don't even have a Vexlar. I don't have any electronics to go along with what we're doing. But I've got an auger, I've got some rods, and I've got some tip-ups. And so just getting everything into the sled and then sliding out onto the ice, we put up the deer blind and we make sure that we, weight it down with some sand blocks or whatnot. And all right, so now we've got our setup and we're going to drill some holes in. And my one boy he's got to have the scooper. He's going to make sure that there is not a single snowflake in your fishing hole at all. He will keep those clean. And all right, well, we're going to go, we've jigged a bunch. Now we're going to go check the tip ups. So we're going to go on a hike and we're going to go look at all the tip ups. And then we're going to come back and then we're going to get into the snacks. And it's just kind of like a big production. Kind of like with our small game hunt. It's the fun part is basically getting there, setting it up, and then tearing it all back down and going home. So we haven't ripped a lot of lips, but just the production of getting to go do something and the potential that something might happen. Now we have hooked up with, I did get a nice decent pike off a lake here in Barry County. And then we did have bluegill come through, and so they were just ripping on those. And we did get a fantastic couple days, a couple years ago where we were able to do that. And I think we're still kind of living on that high of like, oh, we could potentially do that again this year. So that's what we're going on, is previous experience just being out on the ice, not necessarily being out there to just commit to pulling things out.
So, being that you'd mentioned snacks and ice fishing, I don't know, maybe this will be this will fall on deaf ears, but because you're the Huntavore, because you're the redneck connoisseur, redneck gourmet, have you utilized, or do you have like a recipe, maybe your favorite like buddy heater like meal, buddy heater recipe?
Buddy heater meal. I'm looking at them right over here. I go with the quick grab. We don't necessarily cook anything when we're out there, but I do bring legit snackle box. I've got the Plano. I bought 2 extra Plano boxes just to put crackers and summer sausage and sticks and pickles, and basically it's charcuterie in a box. On accident, though, this past year, because of the amount of deer that were taken during archery season in our group of friends, and guys getting really good shots with their early firearm, when we had our deer beer camp, we would normally make heart tacos. I was only able to marinate 3 hearts to make tacos out of. And I show up and there's a dozen guys that are there. And I'm like, guys, I cannot feed you all with heart. Like I made it up and it was gone right away. It's just like when you're saying when you brought all the kids out, like they smoked all those, they ate all that heart up. It was the same way. I made up tacos and before I knew it, they're all gone. We had more fixins. We had more toppings than we actually did meat. But it wasn't going to stop us. So we were going to figure something out. So Buddy had a couple logs of summer sausage. If you take a coin of summer sausage, make it 1/4 inch thick, and then you lay that summer sausage on the griddle and you sear both sides, chop that up nice and throw that in a tortilla. Like, that is a new style of taco. The summer sausage taco won the hearts of a lot of people. And it was just a basic cheddar and jalapeno summer sausage. If you're out on the lake and you got your buddy heater, tip that to the side and take your summer sausage that you were going to eat cold and I'd say give it a couple minutes on each, or give it a few seconds on each side. A fried summer sausage coin, I tell you, is way better than having that summer sausage cold.
Yeah, and that's why you tune into the Huntavore right there. Is that
Exactly.
that kind of
redneck ingenuity for taking the mundane and just giving it a little the spice of life. That's all that we're doing.
So for people who haven't followed along or anything like that, like where is the Huntavore? Where can they find you? And then are you doing any YouTube stuff? Are you doing any cooking stuff? Like what are you doing?
Gotcha. Yes. So I did find out, I did Google myself, and Huntavore, oddly enough, is not a huge brand. It's just me. So the first 6 links are all to me. So if you Google Huntavore, you will find me. I am a regular on the Sportsman's Empire Podcast Network. I also have just my own feed if you wanted to just tune in to me as well. And you can just search that under Huntavore Podcast. Facebook's been difficult for me as far as trying to get back with people and messaging and being able to post things, but Instagram has been something where my wife says I'm actually too active on there. But if you need to get a hold of me, look at Huntavore on Instagram. You'll see stuff that I'm doing either with my boys or doing with my game, keeping you up to pace on what my seasons are looking like. And then again, trying to do new things that I'm going to be able to incorporate into my own diet. Like I really, really do want to keep trying to get on the knife edge of being the first one to try this or the first one to try that. But honestly, I want to make stuff like appealing and stuff that people will find that they want to do. So come along on that journey. Feel free to DM me on there as well. I love troubleshooting, brainstorming. You got a piece that you're not sure what you want to do with, get a hold of me and we'll brainstorm that with you. I want to give you the freedom to make what you're going to make, but at the same time, I can offer you maybe a direction here or there.
Awesome, man. Well, it's always fun catching up, and we'll definitely have to do this again soon.
Absolutely, Adam. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you.